Where did this initiative start? What's your idea behind this?
Well, I've been interested in human rights all my life as a lawyer, very active in civil rights stuff, and in fact, the first thing I did when I went into the legislature back around 1970.
In Manitoba?
Yeah, I introduced the first Manitoba Bill of Rights. I regard the Canadian Charter of Rights as one of the great milestones in the history of this country. So I've always been interested in it, and when Diefenbaker, in fact, I was involved as a lawyer in the push to get John Diefenbaker's, I think it was in 1956 or something, the Canadian Bill of Rights. There is that. I've been close to, and very thrilled with the process in '82 when Trudeau and Chrétien pulled the miracle. When they talk about Jean Chrétien's
the Charter of Rights
legacy, or Pierre Trudeau's legacy, I'm telling you, future generations are going to stand up and cheer, because the Charter of Rights. There are people who don't like charters of rights. I won't discuss that for the moment. There are people like me who say this is not a perfect Charter of Rights, but by God, thank heavens we've got it. And so, otherwise, ask any female who's been empowered with equality by the Charter of Rights. Ask any gay or lesbian who's been suddenly able to have equality because of the Charter, and on and on. So I went to Pierre Trudeau in '82 and said, look, I was a previous political colleague of his.
You could say the word liberal without stuttering.
Oh, well, that's two syllables. I was an agrarian prairie liberal. Pierre was a Montreal, and I guess you call it Central Canada down here.
Right.
Anyway, so I put the proposition to him that this was such a monumental achievement that it ought to be celebrated in some tangible way, that just like the American Declaration of Independence is, and on and on. And he agreed with me, but his agenda was full, and he just couldn't get at it. Loved the idea, but couldn't get at it. And so I parked it for a while because I got busy. And about 3 years ago, there had been an attempt to get a Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, and there had been a parliamentary committee, and it had bogged down in competition between the various interest groups and ethnic groups and racial groups, and it exploded. And I came to the conclusion that the only way it could get done was if the private sector led it. So I got a feasibility study, and it looked like it would work. And the unique thing was, because I am a Canadian who believes in the decentralization of the badges of Canada, our institutions right across the country, the logical place to put the museum was Winnipeg. Everything does not have to be in Ottawa. In a well-developed democracy, the principal institutions and the vision of the nation has got to be spread across the country. Can't be centralized. So that people feel in Calgary or in Vancouver that the government in Ottawa is their government, not the government down there, because they can drive to work and they can see, some badge of the country. So, next step was to apply for some Western diversified funding, and I put in money, and they did, and we did a very, very comprehensive feasibility study. We were able to engage the finest, most fabulous team of experts, and it turned out every one of them was Canadian. What a joy to learn that some of the best museum developers in the world are Canadians. So we were able to keep it at home, and finally we developed that much material on it.
Why the focus on human rights?
Well, in the first place, there is no human rights museum, get this, anywhere in the world. The most important aspect of life, your right to life, liberty, freedom of choice, da-da-da-da. The whole 9 yards of living is tied up in your human rights. And there is no place in the world where that idea is taught And if you want to humanize this planet, you have to start with what is the social contract? What are the rights with which I'm born? We have to celebrate human rights. Now, that could be located in Geneva, or could be located in anywhere. But we want to celebrate and teach the human rights story of Canada, warts and all, because our children aren't taught human rights in school. I've got children who've got probably 3 degrees, who've never been required to study human rights, the cornerstone of our society. Suddenly we get a Charter of Rights. It's time to celebrate what we've got, and it's also time to make sure we're teaching our kids it wasn't always like that. Women did not have the vote. They were not legal persons. Aboriginals were sent to separate schools. Ukrainians in World War I were interned. Citizens, Japanese, were interned in World War II. We have to tell those stories. Refugee ships, both Jews and Sikhs, were turned away for people to die from this country. So we have some warts. The Acadians were expelled from their home in New Brunswick by the British. The Canadians dispersed around the world. So we have some stories to tell. We have stories to tell about the Mennonite community. We have stories to tell about the Doukhobor community.
Does everyone get the same space there? I mean, we have...
No, you know.
There is that criticism that there's one genus, the Holocaust, has taken greater space in the human rights.
That's true. No,
it is true?
Let me explain.
No,
there are... It is a major feature. The museum hasn't been laid out yet, but it will be. There's no question. There will be a prominence, because we're going to tell the story of the causes. What happens when we aren't vigilant in the protection of human rights? There is no better way to teach the causes, rather the results of what happens. Here was a country, Germany, one of the most cultured countries, just like Canada, produced the finest scientists, the finest musicians, the finest composers, the finest poets, the finest judges, civilized. And it elects democratically a government that Hitler was no dictator from the beginning, and descended because people didn't watch it. People didn't care. And what it teaches you, the viewer, because the Holocaust wasn't just about Jews. Gypsies were slaughtered, homosexuals were slaughtered, the elderly were slaughtered, people with physical impairment were slaughtered. This barbaric conduct in the 20th century of an enlightened country.
And it happened.
So of course you tell it.
When does it open?
When does it open? I'm still raising the money.
Well, you know, you're a guy. You're an active guy.
I'm dedicated. I'm committed. I'm maybe pathological, but I believe.
You're announcing it now, but you will open it.
Oh, if the stars align, I'd like to believe that on Canada Day 07, the latest 08, the Queen will come. Mandela will come, the descendants of Gandhi will come, the descendants of Martin Luther King Jr. will come, and we'll open it.
You have an architect yet?
No. What we're doing as we speak is preparing, and this is key to this program. We Canadians have a tendency to aim for the middle, not the top, not for the stars. Here we're aiming for the stars. It's not worth doing if we don't aim for the stars. I mean, I have other things to do with my life, and I only want to do it if this becomes an international architectural icon, symbol of Canada. The idea is that when you see the Sydney Harbour, you see the Opera House, and you know, without anything on the screen, that you know you're in Sydney. See the Eiffel Tower, you know you're in Paris, you're in France. When you see Big Ben, you know you're in... We don't have such an edifice in this country. So this will be, you know, paramount. And therefore we'll have an international exhibition, contest, which we're getting ready right now.
Hey.
But I haven't got all the money put
Okay, but you forgot the CN Tower, for God's sakes.
That's right. If that's the symbol. Well, I would like to hope that we would have a symbol that isn't. I don't want to use any.
Go ahead. As a Winnipegger, take your shot at Toronto. Go ahead.
Oh no, I love being in this disease-free city, coming from mad cow country and West Nile viruses, and it's a great privilege to be here.
It's a great land. It's a great pleasure to speak with you. Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.